It's a donation that's being given by companies, very rich people, so that for 150 years they've wanted a ballroom here. We didn't ask for any tax money. We have no tax. This is taxpayer free. We have no taxpayer putting up 10 cents. $300 to $400 million, depending on finishes. If I use very expensive marble, if I use very expensive wall coatings, if I could bring it up to 400.
How many of you knew that we've been wanting a ballroom for 150 years? Literally nobody has been wanting a ballroom for 150 minutes. That was back in March. 5 months have passed since that nonsense, since Donald Trump actually took a bulldozer, an actual bulldozer, to the actual east wing of the White House with plans for a massive, tacky, gold-plated ballroom in its place. But today there's bombshell new reporting that reveals that publicly Trump has significantly lowballed the cost to taxpayers and has lied to the American people by promising us that we would not, as taxpayers, be funding any of this ballroom. From that new Washington Post report, quote, a detailed project summary prepared for the White House by the contractor more than 3 weeks before Trump's comments estimated the total construction cost at $600 million. With more than half of that coming from taxpayers, according to a copy of the contractor estimate obtained by the Washington Post. In fact, according to the reporting, quote, multiple project summaries provided to the White House by Clark Construction show that internal cost estimates have been significantly higher than administration officials have acknowledged in public comments or court filings. They also show that the work was projected to rely heavily on taxpayer dollars from the moment it was announced. Washington Post is also reporting that the White House refused to answer questions about the internal cost estimate or taxpayer funding. We're back with Mark, Angelo, and Maya. Mark, I know no one is going to be shocked watching this program that, one, Trump was lying the whole time, and two, that the taxpayers are going to fund this. But if you look at Trump's existential political crisis right now is that he's so deeply unpopular, he's likely to drag Republicans down in House and Senate contests and spend the next 2 years, to quote John Cornyn, in the, quote, most miserable 2 years of his life. That is a crisis that is exacerbated by his indifference to what taxpayers are going to fund at the same time that those very same Americans are paying exorbitant prices, both for gas and groceries and housing and everything else. How do you take in this new reporting on this story?
Yeah, look, if you want further proof that Donald Trump is going to try to suppress the vote and subvert the election results, just look at how he is acting. Right. He said that, he's happy with inflation. He's now sticking the cost of the ballroom that nobody wants to the taxpayers. You put up before the how unpopular this whole UFC fight was, even before the outrageous comments. Every time Republicans on the Hill ask him to do something to pass a popular piece of legislation, instead he tries to attach the SAVE Act to it. Right? He is not acting like a man who thinks that they are going to win the elections through the persuasion of voters to vote for Republicans. Instead, he's acting like an autocrat, someone who thinks that when the time comes to it, he will prevent the Postal Service from delivering mail-in ballots to voters he doesn't want, that will perhaps seize ballots through the FBI or the Department of Justice, will investigate and indict his political enemies, and if necessary, will try to overturn the elections first in court and then through extrajudicial means. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because it's what he did in 2020. It's, how many of you who are watching this came to know me because I represented President Biden and the DNC in defeating those efforts in court. And we are setting up once again a structure in which Donald Trump does all of these unpopular things because he thinks he has an ace in the hole in voter suppression and election subversion come this November.
Maya, the conduct certainly all connects in the way that Mark Elias articulates. The rub, though, is that an autocrat, well, at least the autocrats that we've studied in modern history, Orban, move more strategically and frankly more slowly. I mean, there's such a smash and grab to this that the people who are revolted, we covered the New York Times story yesterday. I mean, white non-college educated voters have swung more dramatically in the last 18 months than at any point in modern history against Trump. What is your sense of where this is all taking us?
Well, I think you just said it, Nicole, and Mark certainly said it too. Look, voters, no matter the voter, is often voting on their well-being. They're often voting on whether their problems are getting solved and whether their lives are getting better or worse. And right now, we are talking about an administration that has, to your point, taken what was Project 2025. Remember Project 2025, which basically said it was going to weaponize government. It was going to decimate government's ability to do some of the services and investments in people that are, quite frankly, quite popular. And it was going to do it driving a form of extremism we were just talking about in your previous segment when we were talking about the bigotry and racism that includes Michelle Obama and the capitulations around it. I mean, this was a playbook and a plan. To your point, what happened when they got in is I think they've surpassed it, because once you say, we don't care about the rules, we don't care about the norms, we don't share the principles, the fundamental principles of a democracy, and it's not just about whether we disagree on policy, it's that we don't care about people. We only care about ourselves. And they're making that plain to the American people. Even people who might agree with some of their policy positions, maybe a lot of their policy positions, but yet they can't put gas in their gas tank. Their Head Start programs have been cut. They can't afford to see a doctor when they're sick. They're wondering if they're going to be able to pay their mortgage. Some folks can't get insurance against the weather, the hurricanes that this administration has said are fake news. I mean, you just go down the list, and there's simply no measure of life that I can certainly find where mainstream Americans would say, we're going in a great direction, we're much better off, gee, my life is so much better.